Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I wanted to take a chance and take a look at some of the meta decks that are out there in the tournament scene right now. Last weekend on September 2nd, as you see here, there's a PPG Lorcana tournament. If you want any information on their events, you can go to ppgeventmanagement.com. They've got all their tournament results here. They also have an upcoming Miami TCG tournament in October. And if you're interested in any of the deck lists, you can click on here and see the deck lists. Just note that the deck lists are kind of just pictures of the actual deck. So I did take the liberty here to go through and make some of the deck lists here on Dreamborn. So first, let's take a look at some of the decks here and get some information. So the first deck we're going to look at number 3 in the tournament. It was a Steel Amethyst deck piloted by Ryan Miles. It does have a nice curve here in terms of casting costs. However, you do know it is a bit on the higher end. You do have 12 cards at 5 casting costs, another 4 at 6, 2 at 7, and 3 at 8. So certainly it's a higher end deck. Almost a third of the deck, 17 out of the 60 cards, are non-inkable. And the deck is going to cost about $440, as you see here. So notable cards in the deck. We have Captain Hook, a nice one-drop that can challenge as a 3-2, so good for challenging. You have Magic Brooms here. A Reasonable Body. The reason you play this is it goes with Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse allows you to play these for 1 less if you have them on the field, and anytime one of these get banished in a challenge, you return them to your hand, so that's just card advantage right there, and you can aggressively trade in. You have Elsa here that you're able to exert chosen opposing characters, so if they have a character that you need to get rid of and they don't want to quest with it or challenge with it, you're able to exert them and get the challenge. Maleficent is just an excellent card here as a Reasonable Body, and you also draw a card, so it replaces itself. As you'll see, a lot of the deck is based on card draw, and Jafar really benefits off this, that it gets +1 power for each card in your hand. So if you have 4/5 power here, you're getting like a 4/5 or a 5/5 creature for only 4 ink. Mickey Mouse, as we spoke about, is a Reasonable Body. I mean, you get a 3/4 and 2 lore, and then on top of that, you're able to get a lot of value out of the Magic Brooms, which is excellent. You do have Captain Hook, which is the first non-inkable casting card creature. And the benefit here is that you're able to return Fire the Cannons, which is an excellent removal spell to your hand, which is good. You do have Hans here, which is again a Reasonable Body with 2 lore for 4, and then every time he quests, you're able to ping for 1 damage. You have the Queen, who's able to draw your cards and get more card advantage, and again, it's a Reasonable Body for challenging. The Beast is going to get rid of their items, and again, good challenging, good lore. Tinkerbell is just awesome. If you've seen any of my other videos, I'm a huge fan of it. You're able to, when you play the character, you deal 1 damage to every creature they have, and then anytime you banish a creature, you deal 2 damage to another creature. You do have Ursula, which is another non-inkable card here for 7. Big body, good for questing, and then you get to draw a card essentially when it comes out. And then Elsa, fortunately, you do have the shift onto the baby Elsa here for 6, and then you get to exert 2 of their creatures and they don't ready up, and it's just a big body that can win you the game. So overall, you have a good kind of set of cards here. All can aggressively trade. All are bigger bodies. So this is one of those kind of high-end mid-range decks that's just going to have good creatures that are going to win the trades, and then through that get you card advantage. And on top of that, you're getting card advantage through Magic Brooms recurring through Mickey, your Fire the Cannons recurring through Captain Hook, just getting drawing cards from Maleficent and the Queen. All of these things are just going to give you a lot of value, and you're just going to outvalue your opponent. In terms of actions, you got 4 Fire the Cannons. In terms of songs, you got 3 Friends on the other side. This nets you 1 card, so you use this card to get 2 cards, so you're +1 card. Grab Your Swords, again, just deal damage across the board, and pair that up with things like Hans, where you do 2 damage to everything, and then he quests, and you deal another damage, and you take out some of their 3 toughness creatures. You do have Magic Mirror, only 1 copy, which is good. You draw some cards, again, outvaluing your opponent, and White Rabbit's Pocket Watch allows you to give a character rush so they can challenge the turn they come in. Overall, I really like this deck. I think it's well crafted. I like a lot of the numbers. The only few things that I do wonder in terms of improving is I do wonder if you could get some more Magic Mirrors in here. I feel like that's a very strong card overall, and I just think just having 1 in your deck, oftentimes you're never going to see it. So it doesn't. I feel like if you're going to play a card like this, you want at least 2 or 3 of them. Also wonder if you can get Smash in, the steel removal spell that deals 3 damage to any creature. Cards I would consider taking out. The two of Jafar I think you could likely get rid of. Obviously it's a strong card that challenges in, but you already have a lot of creatures that can do this. And maybe just getting some removal spells or some card draw on the Magic Mirror could be worth it. And same with Ursula. I mean, we already have a ton of top end with like big bodies with Hans and the Queen, Beast, Elsa, Tinkerbell. Just playing two of these and they are non-inkable. You could smooth out your curve a little better if you played like Smash, which is inkable. But overall, I'm a big fan of this deck. I really like it, and certainly it's a good deck because it got third. Next up, we're looking at a Ruby Amethyst deck piloted by Jonathan Ball. This deck is much more expensive than the other two at over $600. The other thing on this deck is it's playing over 60 cards. It's playing 61 or 67 cards, which I'm not a huge fan of. Unless like a mill deck is super rampant where you think you're going to get decked out. 67 cards just makes your deck less efficient. It makes it, I mean, your draws just aren't going to be as consistent as it could be. One thing you see is on its casting cost curve, you're kind of missing a mid game. So you've got a lot of early drops and you've got a lot of late drops. I mean, you've got, how many are we looking at here? 9 7 drops and 6 8 drops and 4 9 drops. I mean, this is a very heavy end deck towards the top. So the important thing is that you make it there. But if you do make it there, certainly you're going to have a lot of power. And then similar to the previous deck, this is almost 1/3 of your deck is non-inkable. So you could have some problems with draws, especially if you're trying to get up to 9 ink. It might be tough if a third of your deck is non-inkable, but clearly this deck did well. It got second. So let's take a look. You've got some Archimedes and Tibbs, which are just there for early trades. You've got Magic Broom that can trade aggressively with Mickey Mouse again. Gaston can't even quest, but certainly can trade up. So this whole suite here, the whole idea is get the trades to get you to late game, right? You want to keep them off floor, and so you need these in to trade aggressively. You're not trying to quest with these. You want to be trading with these. Maleficent's just a good value card. You're able to draw a card once you play it and then trade it off. Rafiki has Rush, so again, trading it off. Aladdin serves two purposes because you want to get to late game. This is one of those situations where them losing lore is significant, because certainly if you're trying to get up to 9 casting costs, you need to make sure they don't get 20 lore, so that is relevant. And then shifting the bigger Aladdin to get rid of some more of the lore and challenging aggressively. You do have Jafar, only one copy. I'm not sure how big of a fan I am of this. I think I'd almost rather see more Mickey Mouses here, just to have a more consistent draw with Magic Broom. And even if you have like 3 cards in your hand, then he's essentially the same body as Mickey Mouse, except then you don't get the benefits of the magic brooms. So I'm not a huge fan of the one of. And that's one thing a lot of this deck, a lot of these cards have just one ofs, which, as I've said before, I'm a broken record here. It makes it inconsistent. It's going to be hard to play test and know what changes to make. I do wonder if some of this is just card availability. If there was a bigger pool of cards to draw from or own, just because product is so short, if maybe this deck would have been tweaked. I also suspect this deck would just benefit from playing 60 cards. So I do wonder about cutting things like Jafar, maybe getting another Mickey. Same thing with the Queen. This deck is very top end heavy, and certainly you're going to want to make sure you're drawing cards and not running out of gas. And so I feel like the Queen is an easy 3 or 4 of. But they only have one of here, so most games you're not drawing the Queen, most games you're not drawing Jafar, so I'd probably make that change. Evasive, Goofy here, I think is expensive. You're able to deal with their evasive creatures, but again, you have to have better ways to deal with those than just playing a 5-drop and hoping to trade. I feel like if you could take out these 2 Goofies and just get more towards the 60 card deck. Maui here is good. He's able to challenge some of those bigger creatures in the mid game and get you into the late game. And then we get into our late game suite here. You've got just one Ursula, again a non-inkable that you're not going to draw consistently. You got 4 Aladdins, which are excellent. You've got 4 Elsas, which are excellent. 4 Maleficents that are clearly going to win you the game if they come down, and 2 Mickey Mouses, which can aggressively get you lore. So the top end suite here is super powerful. I think there are a few changes I would make. I'd have to play test to make sure it worked. Also wonder about the 4 Maleficents. I do wonder if just playing 3 Maleficents would be sufficient. In terms of actions, they have Befuddle. I guess this is probably played as a tempo because you don't have a lot of creatures with 2 or less toughness that you're trying to bounce, right? All of these creatures you're going to play and then trade, and they've all got 2 toughness. So certainly you're not using them to save your creatures after getting damage on them. So I guess this is a little bit of a tempo play. Again, I just feel like you just cut these 2 cards and just make your deck a 60 card deck and just make it more consistent than having this like mediocre card in your deck. I'd pump up the Dragonfire. I think you'd need 4 of these. Friends on the other side, certainly reasonable. Be prepared, banishing everything. I just don't think you need this many. If you're up at 7 casting costs already, you're the type of deck that you should be about to take over the game. It might just be to stabilize the board, but certainly having 4 of they're just going to get stuck in your hand, and you're never going to want to play more than 1 in a game. I'd probably cut this down to 2 or 3. The Shield of Virtue is fine. I'm a big fan of the Magic Mirror. Ursula's Cauldron, again, just a 1 of. That helps to maybe smooth out your draw and isn't inkable. I don't think that's what you want to be doing. And the White Rabbit's Pocket Watch, I think this really excels on this deck, because a lot of these cards, when you get them out, this is where you want to make sure you're able to rush them on the same turn. So this is, if there's one deck I think White Rabbit's Pocket Watch really shines, it's going to be in this deck, because you're going to need to take over the game quickly. So overall, very strong deck. Has a lot of the suite of the cards that the previous deck we just saw have. Big card advantage, big late game. A few tweaks I would do just to make it more consistent. I also think you could probably make it much less expensive. If you were just willing to not play the Maleficents, I mean, that's $200 right there that you save. Same with the Be Prepares. If you're just going to cut the Be Prepares and then you get down to like 59 cards, that's like $260 off this deck, right there. And I still think you'd have a pretty good top end, if you're looking to make it budget. And then finally, our number 1 deck, we have a Steel Amber deck piloted by Anthony King. I'm a huge fan of this deck. I think it's well crafted. It's 60 cards. It's $450 total. It's got a, as you see, just kind of a constant decrease in card casting cost, which means that this is more of an aggressive deck, as opposed to the others you saw that you wanted to get to late game. Ideally, this one you're going to want to finish out early. It's got the least amount of non-inkable cards, which I'm a big fan of. So let's take a look at the suite. So here, as you see, we've got 5 1-cost creatures, with most of them being 4-ofs. The only one that's not is the Goons. And so you've got 19 1-casting cost creatures. You've got Lilo, who just, like we said, you want to be aggressive, is good on lore. You've got Stitch, which is good because you can shift, and you're going to want to protect. Captain Hook is a good challenger. Goons is there to challenge. Simba allows you to smooth out your draw by drawing a card and then discarding your worst card. And then once you get these out, there's a few things you want to protect. Creatures you want to really focus on protecting are Stitch, because it's a target. Tinkerbell, because it's a shift target as well. And Ariel, because she's able to sing some songs, and you're going to do that with Simba the Bodyguard. So you're going to play him after you kind of dumped your hand and protect your creatures. You do have Prince Eric to challenge some of their creatures as well. Ariel's really an all-star on this deck, in that when you play it for only 3, you look at the top 4 cards of your deck, and you get to pull a song out of it. So obviously, if you have a lot of songs in your deck, which this deck does, oftentimes this is play her and then draw a card for free, and then she sings as 5. So oftentimes you're going to be able to play a 5-cast song on turn 4. So you're going to get some value there. Tinkerbell is going to help you smooth out your draw, just like Simba does, and is also a shiftable target. And then we have our 2 higher end cards. They're listed as 6 drops, but ideally you're going to shift these all the time. And so you've got Stitch, which is just a big body with a bunch of lore. And then anytime you play a creature card with 2 or less, which is essentially all of our creatures, you can exert them when they come out and draw a card. And so that's fantastic. And then Tinkerbell, as always, awesome card, just dealing damage across the board. Really good. In terms of other things to consider, you do have a good removal suite. You do have 3 smashes. You do have 4 grab your swords. You do have Be Our Guest, which lets you draw some creature cards. Particularly important if you don't have your top end creatures, or if you're missing Ariel and you need to sing a song. And you do have 2 cards, 4 of each, so 8 cards total, that are 5-cast songs. So Ariel is able to sing both. One is Grab Your Sword, and one is A Whole New World. We'll speak about A Whole New World here in just a minute. And then finally, Lantern. you pay 1 less for the next character you play this turn. So what does the gameplay with this deck look like? You essentially want to dump all your cards, get them all on the field, right? Like ink turn 1, play a card. Ink turn 2, play 2 cards. Ink turn 3, play a 2-drop and a 1-drop. Get everything on the field as quickly as possible. You want to use Ariel to be digging for a whole new world if you don't have it in your hand. Once you dump your hand, ideally on like turn 4, turn 5, everything is either in ink or on the battlefield. And then you're going to sing with Ariel. You're going to sing a whole new world. Your opponent will likely have 3 or 4 cards left in their hand. They have to get rid of them all and draw 7. So they're going to go up whatever, 3 or 4 cards total. You're going to go up 7 cards. And the benefit of singing this with Ariel is that same turn, after you draw 7 new cards, you'll still have whatever 4, 5, 6 inkable ink to play the rest of your hand out. So this is just the idea. So you get your hand out early, as many cards as you can, and then you draw full hand of gas there that you're able to play that turn, and you really just outrace your opponent. This is even more important for things like Lantern, to get things out early or get multiple cards out on a turn, and you kind of rinse and repeat this, just dumping your hand. You do have to be careful for things like grab your sword, overplaying into that if you're playing a steel deck. Be prepared in the Ruby deck we just saw, if they're up around 7 inkable casting, or 7 ink rather. You certainly want to be careful about dumping your entire hand, because if you run into a be prepared, that's probably over. But as long as they're not on like 7 ink, or if you have a way to protect against grab your sword, like if you have some of your bigger creatures out, Tinkerbell and Simba and Prince Eric and Ariel, and a lot of these that can survive, just make sure not to dump these against a silver deck, and then you're really sitting pretty. I really like this deck. If I was to play a competitive deck right now, I'd probably do some variant of this. Things I would change up, I don't know if I'd change up much. I do wonder how well a fire cannons would be. I know the opponent, like the purpose of the deck isn't to necessarily get rid of your opponent's creatures, but I think it could help close out some of the late game trades. But I mean, that's about it. Otherwise, this is a really good deck, really finely tuned. Yeah, I just really like this deck overall. I also wonder if you could perhaps drop a Lantern to increase either a Tinkerbell, one of the 2 Tinkerbells. Same with the Goon. Could you drop a Goon and a Lantern and get 4 of each Tinkerbell, just to have a more smooth top end there? Potentially, but yeah, overall, I really like this deck, and this is what I'd be looking to play, and it's certainly a reasonable cost here, at $440. The downside is I don't think there's much of a budget deck. I mean, you've got a lot of these cards. If you were looking to make a cut, what would I be doing? I think you need the Ariel, so that price tag can't go. You need the Stitch and the Tinkerbell, and you need a lot of them, so that has to stay. A whole new world is really the cornerstone of the deck, so you can't shave off on that. You don't have enough removal to be cutting grab your swords. I think potentially you could trade grab your swords for some smashes and potentially get a bit more budget there. You probably cut a Lantern or 2. The only place I'm really seeing making a cut is the Lilos. Paying $20, well, certainly it's good as putting the pressure on and you want it in your deck. If you were really on a budget and you wanted to save close to $100, I would just replace Lilo with another low casting cost creature in either Amber or Steel. Just pick up some Goons or whatnot. But that is it. I hope everyone enjoyed this. I will be covering more meta decks and more tournament news as they come out. If you like this video, please hit the like button. If you really like this video, please hit the subscribe button. If you have any questions, please drop them below. I'm always happy to answer. And I'll see everyone soon.